Merlin Wendelboe. Again, that's such an amazingly cool name. Has a couple of hits here, I think. But his first question is actually a very good one, and it's an appropriate question for Merlin. Why is it that we can all watch The Lord of the Rings, liberal and conservative alike, and can all tell that the forces of Mordor are the bad guys, but in real life, we have so many confused people who believe Obama and Hillary are the good guys? Merlin, it's even worse than that. If you listen to some of the principals in that movie, Viggo Mortensen, who I just think is one of the best actors ever, and Sam, the guy who played Sam, is the son of Patty Davis, and Sean Astin. You listen to Sean Astin, they'll talk about Lord of the Rings, and they'll say the forces of Mordor are the Tea Party, and they'll say that these are and that, this whole thing is about liberals standing up to, to the forces of conservatism. One of the low points of my life, and of a couple of other people that I know too, one of the low points of the last 8 years was when the director of Lord of the Rings was on the Colbert Show, and he gave him a sword from Lord of the Rings, because Colbert's a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and he gave Steve Colbert the sword as a way of thanking him for fighting, against the Tea Party. So, what do you say about that? Where do you go from there? It's just absolutely heartbreaking. Thank you, Peter Jackson. Thanks so much, guys. Again, about 9 of them coming up now, but thank you. What do you say about that? Peter Jackson doesn't know a damn thing about the Tea Party, doesn't know anything about American politics. But, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, this is the kind of beatings that you would take in the pop culture. Same thing with Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever. These people come in, the people you've admired all your life, or people who stories you've admired for all of your life. And then you hear these people say things like this. But to sort of roundabout answer your question, Merlin, you can actually, if I was to get in an actual head-to-head debate with Sean Astin, I would say, okay, Sean, let's say that you're right. Then if you represent the forces of good in the movie, we can all agree that armed might is important, right? We can all agree that having a powerful defense is in fact the most important thing, right? We can agree that having city walls are really, really, really important, right, Sean? I mean, Minas Tirith is only Minas Tirith because it's way the hell up on a cliff, and they've got gigantic big walls. So we can all agree that the good guys live in Minas Tirith, the men of Gondor, and they live in a gigantic fortress with big high walls, and they have lots of weapons, and they have catapults and all the rest. So we can agree that that's good when you're fighting the forces of evil, no matter who they may be, right? And we can also agree that it's the efforts of an individual who destroyed the ring. It wasn't a committee. It wasn't the UN. It wasn't a non-governmental agency. And they, by the way, Sean, when they went to destroy the ring, not only Frodo and Sam, but every single other character in the show, including Gandalf, were armed with the most advanced weaponry that they had at the time. So I'm going to assume that you're in favor of that too. So, Merlin, such a great name for this. When you break it down for them, they're really kind of stuck because they don't believe in any of these things. Movie making is conservative by nature. It's about individuals. There is no other definition that I've ever found for the two different schools of thought here, liberals, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans. The only one that makes sense to me consistently is individualists versus collectivists. And they're all collectivists. And if they tell you that they are the heroes in the Lord of the Rings movie, then ask them when they became individualists, because the Lord of the Rings is about, essentially, strip everything away. The Lord of the Rings is about two individuals. It's about Frodo, whose purity of heart, his individual purity of heart, is what allows him to undertake a mission that no one else is pure enough to undertake. And it's about Aragorn, who has to make a decision on whether or not he's going to be a ranger in the shadows or whether he's going to step up and be the king. So it's about individuals, and it's not about the collective. And they didn't send the entire elf army to drop the ring And Frodo is not like the other hobbits in the collective and all the rest. All the rest, you can just nail them on it, but you just have to take it apart piece by piece and ask them what the hell they're talking about. So that's Lord of the Rings, which, again, the reason I bring it up is you say it's easy to tell who the good guys and the bad guys are in Lord of the Rings. They think we're the bad guys in the Lord of the Rings. No fooling. Here you go, Stephen Colbert. Here's your sword to fight the Tea Party with, the sword of Aragorn. Anyway, so now to the bigger question, why can't we see this in real life? I think I've talked about this a few times. I really need to read more about it because I think it's the answer really to pretty much everything. The thing I want to study more is heuristics, and we might have talked about that on the last show. It certainly was not more than 1 or 2 shows ago. And basically, for those of you who weren't watching, or I'm sure I can get an education from every single person watching this right now. You're the smartest people I ever met. But a heuristic is essentially a way of learning. We learn through heuristics, and as I understand the concept, heuristics are little building blocks of information that then simply are connected and stacked. You don't have to relearn everything every time. Every single day you don't have to get up and rediscover that hot stove burns your fingers. Once you learn that, that's a heuristic node in your behaviors, and you just know not to do that anymore. And so on. And the people who think Hillary and who think Obama are the good guys are people who've never had the experience of what's going on in the actual world, so they never developed the heuristics necessary to come to a different conclusion. I'm not going to just stand here and tell you this is right. I mean, although it is. I was never a modern liberal in any sense of the word. I was always loved the country. I always loved business. I always loved the military. That would disqualify me on 3 counts immediately. But I was a lot more liberal than I am today. And let's just put it that way. I thought Reagan was an idiot and all the rest of it. And having been on both sides of the aisle, and having seen people on both sides of the aisle, I'm here to tell you the conservatives are almost immeasurably better informed than liberals. You can almost not put a value on it. And so what I've come to believe, to answer your question, is the reason some people see Obama and Hillary as good is because they haven't been exposed to enough of what is happening outside of Beverly Hills or New York City. The world is not America. The world is not Disneyland. It's not. Disneyland is Disneyland. America's Disneyland. But the rest of the world just isn't like that. Our soldiers and sailors and airmen, the Marines, Coast Guardsmen come back, and they know this. They may not have known it when they went, but they know it when they come back. We have a very good friend here who's watching the show live who, on a pretty much daily basis, gets to go into a room and look at what the world is actually doing right at that moment. And it's not a pretty place everywhere. In fact, it's not a pretty place in a lot of places. The left doesn't know this. They've never developed the heuristics for it. They've never gone looking for it. I go looking for it. I look for it. I want to see what's going on. I've seen a few beheadings, and I've seen a few people beaten to death with cinder blocks and set on fire and all the rest of it. It's not particularly fun to watch, but it's reality. And when you get to that place, you can make a little better decision. You get better stacks of information. Your heuristics, I think, are more in line with what's actually happening out there. And they don't do it. And the reason they're uninformed is because, well, they're misinformed. They're not uninformed. It's just like Reagan said. It's not that they're stupid. It's just that everything they believe is wrong. They're misinformed, I think, because they cannot bear the reality of it emotionally. They just don't have the strength to face reality in all of its forms. They don't want people to have guns. It's not just that they don't want to have guns. They don't want anybody to have guns. And I'm utterly convinced that the reason that they don't want other people to have guns is because they know that they are either emotionally or intellectually or physically incapable of defending themselves. They know they would just turn into a little blubbering ball of cappuccino. And so if they're not prepared to or willing or able to defend themselves, then no one else should be able to as well. I said something about this, never used it before, but it was on one of the NRA segments, I think. And I said, the reason they hate people who can defend themselves is the same reason you would hate people that had an immortality pill and you didn't. If you found out that, 40% of the American population was taking a pill that meant that they didn't ever age, and you couldn't get one, you wouldn't want anyone to have one, would you? So there's all of that in there. But basically, ultimately, I think, just to give you the answer in one sentence, Merlin, people look at these politicians differently because their life experiences are different, and their life experiences are different because of their emotional aptitude and their intellectual aptitude and their spiritual aptitude to see what goes on in the intersections where the world is not quite so clean as where the liberals live.